Hello, good morning, and welcome to Tech Talk with T&E. My name is Terry, my wife Elizabeth, and today we get to welcome a special guest, Bill Hogan of Partners Plus. Bill's been a client, a mentor, all kinds of fun stuff with us for, I don't know, going on 3 or 4 years now. But I really thought it'd be a great idea to bring his knowledge into our little network of people because IT security, cybersecurity, all that stuff is like vital, especially now. I'm like Bill. I've been in the game a long time, and it is just amazing how sophisticated things are getting. So, without further ado, welcome, Bill. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
And what part of the world are you in?
I'm in northern Delaware, about a half hour south of Philadelphia.
Oh, right on. Good deal. And I knew that. So. All right.
I would be worried if you didn't know that.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, Miss Elizabeth, we have some questions for Bill. We're actually pretty squared away this time. I would like to say beforehand to like, share, follow. What's the last one?
Subscribe.
Subscribe.
Yep. I need to put that on my damn sticky note. So
I know. Like, share, follow, subscribe.
Exactly. So build the thing up. So, anyways, welcome. Let's do this. This is going to be fun.
Okay. So obviously, a lot of people in our space and in our area is, very much involved in digital services, online platforms, all the things. You come at it, Bill, from a different perspective, the security, which is like the critical component. And there's obviously people know about a lot of spamming, a lot of hacking, a lot of the ugly things that they see. But I think that there's probably a lot more layers to it that they don't really understand. So I know you talk about a hidden crisis in IT security and productivity. So why don't you share with us your perspective?
Well, we're running into a lot of things right now. One of the things we're running into a lot is when I get called in for a prospect to visit their network, I find almost always a horror story in that what they thought they had, they didn't have. And we've gotten to the point now where we tend to refer to it as your current MSP is coasting. And it turns out they put solutions in years ago, they charge every month for them, and you're really not getting any protection. A good example would be subscriptions for your firewalls have expired out so that a lot of the stuff that was working day one isn't working anymore, and the vendor hasn't caught it or renewed it or talked to you about it. And then I go on site and say, well, let's do a couple quick tests, and we find there's virtually no security. You can connect to China can connect to you, etc. And they're horrified when they find it because they know at some point they did have protection against it. So we're running into that a lot. The other thing we're running into a lot is productivity issues. We see a lot of people wasting a lot of time with technology, and we try to help them get past that.
Well, how many times do you see that initial test that they got from this MSP? You said that they were secure. How do a small business know they're secure? As far as we all get told things, hey, I did this and this for you. You're set up for this and this, and then a lot of businesses just assume and go on, thinking they're good until an actual, kind of like, IT person, SEO person, marketer, whatever, happens in all different realms. But and I'm sure you're going to get into this a little bit towards the end, but that's my big question is I always try to find a way to double, triple, quadruple check what I paid for has been done.
Right. And I agree with you on that. And actually, usually when I do come on site and visit somebody, usually almost immediately, I will have them open one of their browsers up and go to 3 different sites. I'll have them go to qq.com, which is China. And if China's being blocked, they won't be able to get there. But if it all comes up, with a website, right there you have a problem. I'll have them go to vk.com, that's victorkilo.com, which is Russia, and that's like their Facebook page. And if that comes up, they know they got trouble. And then I'll have them go to a site that's really not safe for work, like maybe gambling.com. And I want to see that blocked as well, because I know if you're not blocking sites like that, you're probably not blocking any of the other sites that ought to be blocked as well. So that real quick, we can sort of get a real good idea if their firewall and their DNS protection is working at all.
Well, I have a question because a lot of people don't have sensitive information that they're keeping on their website. They're not holding credit card numbers. They're not holding private client information. It's just a business informational site. And I try to explain to my clients, like, a lot of times hackers really aren't trying to steal your proprietary data. A lot of them just want to see if they can do it. I mean, would you agree with that assessment? It's, they do because they can,
Yeah,
right?
it's like tagging the side of a building. You do because you can. They're doing the same thing with websites. They're just jumping in there and seeing what they can do. And a lot of times they got new guys and they're training them. And they're like, just go try and compromise a bunch of sites. Prove to us you got some chops. Okay. So we're seeing that for compromises globally, whether it's a website, whether it's attacks to email, whether it's ransomware to small shops. We're seeing it across the board where it's the new guys who get the small, easy ones, and they just get to cut their teeth on it.
Okay. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Okay. Well, what is like good enough IT? Like, I know that there's so many different levels of security. I know there's a lot of products out there. There's a lot of plugins for websites, but websites are different than your actual computer. So where do you find the balance? And what is a standard IT package per se? Do you have something like that?
We do. And for most people, it starts with email protection. So because there's so much coming in through email, so I'm going to want to have a good anti-spam solution on there, because those links that come your way and you click on the wrong one, you have trouble. Okay. If you are running in an office, then a good firewall, which would block, the Russia and the China, because you happen to click that link that goes straight to a server in Russia, it won't open because it can't get to Russia. Okay. And blocking the website, same kind of thing, where their tools might be on certain websites. Well, if we're blocking those websites, they can't use their tools to compromise your machines. So if you just have a good firewall, and that, doesn't have to be hugely expensive, but needs to be set up correct with the right, ongoing licensing, and then really good email protection, because most of the compromises are that way. Okay. And then finally, a good antivirus on your machines in case you do go to a site that's compromised and you click on a link that's wrong. That will help with that as well.
How important is like we work out of our home, we shut our office down during COVID, but how important is the router? People can still access routers, can't they? As far as, is that a security problem, or
are you talking the router that is coming from your carrier, or are you talking more?
Yes. The one that comes from the carrier that's in my house that I can plug in all kinds of different wires. It's also wireless. It's
right. So what we'll do in cases like that is, the router comes from the carrier. We plug our firewall into that, and everything gets plugged into the firewall. Nothing gets plugged into the router except the firewall. And we don't use the Wi-Fi that the router gives us. We use our own Wi-Fi, and we break it by types of networks. So the first type of network will be corporate-owned devices. So they'll have access to everything internally. Then we'll do BYOD for bring your own device, for like cell phones and iPads and things like that, because they don't need access to internal stuff. And then we'll usually have a guest network too, if you have clients who come visit you or vendors who come visit you, because they don't need to see your in-house stuff either. And that way, the only thing that can see the internal stuff is stuff that we have our agents on and we can watch every day and make sure they're secure, so we don't have to worry about something bad coming in that way.
Yeah, because nowadays the routers also run your TV. They also run your refrigerator.
Yeah, and you'll see, like me at home, I have that kind of stuff in an entirely separate Wi-Fi network, and I assume it's compromised all the time, because devices want to talk to China for that little IoT device you got plugged in, but I don't want it anywhere near my corporate assets. So we'll just separate that on its own network, and it will only have access to the great unwashed, and we assume that, that stuff is kept bad, so we won't bring it on the inside.
Well, that's a good idea.
Didn't you hear that like the iRobot is like the most hacked device ever?
Of course, there's lots of stuff there, so it doesn't surprise me one bit. And as a guy who has a robo vacuum, it's on that Wi-Fi network that I assume is the great unwashed, and I don't let it near anything else. It's it's from a company that is based in Asia, so I fully assume that that could be a leverage point to attack me. So like I say, it's on the outside.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let me see here. Like, I know I've got some talking points. What is the most practical advice that you give for business owners? Obviously, firewall, email, and security protection.
Mm-hmm.
And a follow-up to that same thing would be, is there a difference between having a small office and an office complex compared to having a home business where, like us, like we have? Is the strategy different?
We break our product suite is broken both ways. So if you are in an office environment with multiple employees, whether you have like on-prem servers or your cloud-based servers, we put you in one bucket. And then we have other folks, and we have a product called Easy Cloud, which is strictly designed for the totally distributed office where everybody is sitting in their own house, working entirely remotely, and yet we can still keep them completely locked down, but we have to use different tools to do that because we don't have a firewall in that case. What we're going to do, put a firewall in everybody's house. So instead, we move on board on the machines with the correct monitoring to keep them clean, do the DNS protection right at the machine level rather than the firewall level, and we handle it differently, but it is very doable.
Right on.
Okay. I know you mentioned that a lot of times people think that their IT is good enough, that they think that they have the virus protection. Like you said, it's expired, there's holes, there's gaps. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like how that can hurt a business financially as well as the time?
Yeah. Well, it all comes down to the tools you have in place. Sometimes we'll go on, and I'll generally talk about prospects here. We'll go on site and, oh yeah, we got that Norton antivirus subscription for 5 machines a couple of years ago. It expired out. They didn't realize it, or they didn't install it on all their machines, and nobody's watching it. And that's the real problem, that last little bit, because I'll ask folks and I'll be like, well, you see that error message down in the corner? Oh yeah, it's been there a year or two. I don't really worry about it. I just close that box every morning. And I'm like, that's telling you have a problem. Okay, whether it's a license expiration or something bad on the machine. As long as the machine keeps working, their attitude is it'll be fine. The problem is there's somebody on the network in a lot of those cases, and they're just actively accessing data. As ransomware has become more prevalent and much easier to do. Nowadays, it's more in the script kiddie category where people can do it who don't even really understand what they're doing. And they'll often just farm out pieces of it. So maybe I can figure out how to get into I get a valid email address and password for you. I'll sell it on a marketplace to somebody who knows how to take advantage of it and take over your network, because I haven't figured that part out yet. Or I got a script from one of my buddies and I just ran it and found these valid things. Just recently, we were looking at a security database which had everybody who had remote desktop protocol open to the internet. And we were finding companies all over our area that had a RDP open to the outside world, which is the ability for anybody to remote into it, even though Microsoft has been telling everybody since literally 2000, so 25 years now, don't do this. I found dozens of businesses around us that had it open. So it's the kinds of things we see.
We knew I quote computer tech years ago that didn't believe in updates, and that just infuriated me on so many levels because that's where the vulnerabilities are. I caution our clients, like we have a maintenance program so that I can keep the software updated, keep all your plugins updated, because it's multiple pieces working together, and one fails and there's where your vulnerability is. Yes. So I stress highly security and keeping software updated. I can't even imagine the level that you have to deal with.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the no update thing. we had, I was working with a client up in Boston, and they were looking at bringing an in-house IT guy in who to manage their IT operation. So they asked me to sit in on the interviews, and I interviewed with this one guy who said, "Oh yeah, I don't believe in updates at all. They're just a waste of everybody's time." Turned out he was in charge of the IT for a Jersey-based law firm of about 250 people. And I got a call from him a couple of months later and said, "Bill, you got to help me." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "We got malware on one machine and it spread through everything. This is before ransomware really hit." And he said, "And every time I get a machine clean, I go on to the next couple of machines and come back to the one I just cleaned up and it's reinfected."
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Did you do your updates?" And he said, I said, "Just do me a favor, do the updates." And what he found was when he got a machine clean, did all the updates, it stayed clean. And then he could gradually work his way around and get all 250 machines back up and running. And right after he got everything up and running, they showed him the door and said, "Get out." Okay, so he lost his job over the thing because he just wasn't doing the updates. So they are key. Okay. Now, the other edge of that sword is you can be a little too quick with updates and cause outages because of that too, as Microsoft is famous for doing. So every month, when Microsoft comes out with their update cycle, we're looking through all the updates to decide these ones can be applied right away. These ones are already getting bad press for causing trouble, so we'll hold them a couple of days before we release them. And there's a couple they just can't seem to get right, like the printer issue about a year and a half ago, where they just constantly made a mess out of printers for everybody because they just couldn't get it right, which they finally nailed down, but it was an ongoing problem for everybody. So you need to be watching the updates and applying them, but at the same time, not shooting yourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
And I was going to bring up you just brought up another thing I was going to talk about was the access to printers and copiers.
Mhm.
Especially when I worked for a large mining company, and the IT department never checked the copiers, and they got hit, and it was like something you never even thought of.
Yeah, especially if you're going to plug those copiers or printers into the internet directly with no firewall in front of them, you're just asking for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the company that installed them just plugged them right in for the updates, to update the copier software. But yeah, like you said, with no protection whatsoever.
Yep. And HP has had a actually recurring problem with that with their wireless printers for a while there, and I suspect it's still out there. There was a free tool that you could sit out in somebody's parking lot and see all the HP wireless printers. And if a network jack was plugged into them too, you had full access to the internet, and it was just a free tool you could sit out and run in their parking lot.
Well, so that's a business idea for some leads for you. Just sit out there. Call Partners Plus to secure your network.
Exactly. I thought there for a minute you were saying, "Well, I sit out in the parking lot and compromise folks and then tell them to call me," but I suspect that there'd be a couple of handcuffs coming my way too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you really, it's like, everybody, I think, I don't know, not everybody, but, when I was a kid and, the internet was first starting and, I'd connect to the neighbor's freaking Wi-Fi, it was wide open.
Well, as a guy, I can say this now because it was long enough ago, but I used to do that too. And usually when I'd see a printer out in the open, I would send a little note to it that says, "You want to look at your security, signed a friend."
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed how often those machines disappeared off the internet right away. Okay. Yeah. So, I was glad that they got the message. Okay.
Yeah. Now, what kind of virus protection do you recommend for computers, whether commercial or residential?
Business grade solutions. So if you're a consumer and you want to get something, the one I tend to send a lot of folks to is WebRoot. Okay. We are a big SentinelOne shop. Okay. For all our stuff because it offers us things like SentinelOne. Okay. SentinelOne, and that one also gives 7x24 SOC background, so they're watching at 7x24, which we really like. A mid-tier one, which we like for smaller businesses, is called Huntress. Okay, they monitor the machine. They actually use Microsoft's antivirus, but they turn it into a managed solution so they can see what's going on. That one works great for small businesses. So there's 3 different tiers for you, but the folks who do the high-end security with me all get SentinelOne.
What about somebody that doesn't necessarily have like a business? Like they operate like just through their laptop. It's not like they have an office or employees or anything like that. It just maybe their laptop and their phone is how they run everything. you know.
So that would be a WebRoot solution. Also, I would tell them, you mentioned the phone, you got to stay up to date on your patches. Gotta. Okay. So, we're getting, updates across the board from people who are like, put this patch in right now. Okay. So you need to stay up to date on that. The person who's using the, multi-year-old iPhone and hasn't updated it, or it's out of the update window and can't be updated anymore, needs to either get a new phone or get those updates in. That's a
I
big one.
hear a lot of chatter out there about, the planned obsolescence with phones and stuff like that, that the security updates are, utilizing that as a way to reduce battery life, slower down services. But I also see the other side, like so many people like put their whole life on their phone. You've got your cards in your Google Pay, you've got your passwords, you may have a notepad that has other saved passwords. Like there's such an ability to breach your whole entire world through your cell phone.
Agreed.
So staying on top of the security updates and newer phones. I know it's an expensive little toy, but when your whole life is tied into it, I can definitely see the value.
Yes. And for me, the big one, like if I turned bad tomorrow and decided to attack people, the first place I would attack is their mail. Because I would get their mail, because most people don't have two-factor set up on their mail. And once I get their mail, I can go to just, their banks, their, everything they use, and do a password reset email. And I'll take it all over in the course of an hour or two. I know there's a lot of automated scripts to do that now. So email is by far the most important thing to keep secure.
I think it was like 3 to 5 minutes. Our daughter, when she was 16, got her iPhone compromised. She received an email that her bank password was changed, and they went in and Zelled money out of her account, cleaned out her account, and it was like within like a couple of minutes, and she was horrified, And so, yeah, I totally get how important that is. Because, I mean, just like social media, we tell everybody everything. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing,
Right.
This is what we like and don't like. And I just see, yes, of course, if people would use their powers for good, it would be a better world, but it's not.
Right. Yes. And the big one there, actually two big takeaways there are: one, get two-factor on your email. And I don't mean two-factor by sending a text to your cell phone, because that's a real problem all by itself. And two, unique passwords for everything. We had one of our clients, the owner, he called me one morning. He was really upset. And I'm like, what's the matter? And he said, overnight, all my personal accounts were cleaned out. They cleaned out his retirement. They cleaned out his kids' retirement, or his kids' college funds. They cleaned out their regular funds. And when we looked into it, they ended up getting the FBI involved and the banks involved. And it turned out his wife had been using the same password for everything. And so they just got that one password, and one night while they were sound asleep, went and emptied out all their accounts. And he was working hard trying to get the money back. And all the banks were telling him, you'll get some back, but you won't get it all back. So he was really upset. So yeah, the unique passwords and the two-factor would have saved him. Either one of those would have saved him. But not having either one, they just went to town and emptied everything out.
Yeah. No, that's horrible. That is really horrible. So from a business standpoint, what are some critical security gaps that you know of, that you see, that a lot of businesses don't know about?
Well, taking maximum advantage of their firewall, big one. Okay.
Yeah.
Getting the backups done and done correctly. And when I say done correctly, I mean backed up locally, but also backed up to the cloud, backed up encrypted before they leave your site to the cloud, and then even on a site that's secure with like two-factor and all those kind of things in front of it. So even if that site has a security compromise, all they do is get an encrypted block of data that they can't use. So it has to be encrypted before it leaves your office. That's a big one. We have another big one, which is employees who walk off with IP. Okay. Before we started doing it, which now we do everywhere, we had a large HVAC vendor, and their marketing guy went in, copied all the data to a USB, went in, quit, and a week later they were competing against their own marketing material from another company. So we locked down USB, copying data off networks. We had a CPA firm where somebody got some USB sticks that were pre-infected through Amazon. And she went around and plugged it in every machine because she wanted us to share a PDF for somebody. And we could literally tell her from our alerts how she walked around the office because she just infected every single machine as she walked around. So
I did not even think about that it
yeah.
could already be preloaded. How horrible.
Yeah. So what we do is, we turn off the auto execute now. So even if you get something infected, you plug in and it doesn't start something running automatically. So we do that across our whole base because of that lesson, which is now about 10 years ago.
One of the things that, like, I know absolutely from working with you how seriously you take security. Because anytime we've tried to interact, you've got your filters like locked down like Fort Knox, God bless you. But one of the challenges that I find for web stuff, like a website, especially sending forms to email, some people have their filters so tight that they can't even receive web forms. And that gets to be a point of frustration. So I can see where a lot of business owners would fall away from security for that. I know there are reasons why they should not do that. I know that those gaps can cost them financially in their business, but do you have some good workarounds that, where they can still operate, get their information without having emails locked down? Anytime I work with an IT professional, I'm like, okay, and I need to take a deep breath because I know that we're going to have to go through all of the processes.
Yes, well, IT guys are Mr. No Fun guys when it comes to getting things done sometimes. And I know I'm not going to get Christmas cards from some people when I give them certain answers, but that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
The answer you and I came up with for our site, which is one that we're globally recommending now, is like the from address be, and I think you use like no reply at domain.com. I mean, literally the word domain.com. And then we just whitelisted it internally, took care of every problem. Because if you're going to use my domain, beingpartnersplus.com, now we got to deal with all the SPF changes and DKIM and DMARC and all that kind of nonsense versus just whitelisting a domain that's never going to really be used, like no reply at domain.com. Okay.
Right.
That has been, and I've been actively, since you and I figured that one out because it was torturing you a little bit, I've been recommending that to every one of my clients, web folks, when they call in and say, look, they're not getting the forms. I'm like, well, where's it coming from? And they're always trying to use their domain, which is making, the spam filtering crazy. Okay. So that's a nice, quick, easy workaround. And it's been very successful.
Now, what recommendations do you have for companies that hire employees as far as how to give them access to files, to emails, and if they quit or leave, you can shut it off very quickly?
We're very big on that here. One, well, because of what we do and because of the fact that we're always touching security, we always do background checks before people even come in. You'd be amazed at the things that come up, even though you tell them up front, we're going to do a background check. So background checks are cheap. I encourage people to use them, but in some situations, you're just not going to for whatever reason. So it is limiting their access when they're in-house. Doing simple things like disabling the USB stuff like we were talking about before, so they can't take your IP or load stuff on the network without your permission. Okay, that's a big one. And then the remote access question. So you need to be able to close that down and quickly, because let's face it, sometimes when people leave, they leave in not the best state, okay, and can be a little upset. And we don't want somebody who's a little upset to make a mess for us, which then just leads to a bigger mess for them. So we're very, our clients will reach right out to us and say, we just had somebody leave. We're not sure how it's going to go. We can literally, click a couple buttons and the whole doors are all, closed and locked. So we don't have to worry about it. And the mail that was on their cell phone, that's, blanked out and or, disabled for the company mail, not leaving their personal stuff alone, obviously, but anything that's corporate related can be addressed so that you don't have any IP leakage there too. So those are all easy to do, but you got to plan for them in advance. Trying to do damage control when somebody just got upset and walked out is much harder if you haven't planned for it up front.
No, I agree. We've all experienced that. I mean, anyone who's been in business for a while, you've had employees that don't always leave on the best of terms, unfortunately.
I agree.
So You have some like regular security routines, monthly, check this, check that. I know you mentioned the websites to check. What are some other things that you recommend on a regular basis just to kind of make sure you're on top of everything?
If you don't have managed IT, then making sure things like your antivirus subscriptions haven't lapsed, because you'd be amazed how often that subscription renewal message is going to an email address nobody's looking at anymore. Okay. And then when I tell them about it, they go dig around like, oh yeah, we found the expiration notice from 6 months ago. Okay. So if you do have managed IT, making sure that you can click on the links that are usually down in your tray and making sure it's active in there and running. And I would say checking all the machines. You'd be amazed how often I will go to a site and do an audit of 20 machines, who's a prospect, and find antivirus on half or 2/3 of them. And the other chunk just got missed. Okay. Or what happened was they did a very orderly rollout on the first day and the machines got changed out after that. And whoever was doing the change out didn't roll the tools onto it. So having an MSP who rolls the tools automatically, like every day at noon, all our machines are audited for all our clients. And if they're missing any tool, it just auto installs on there. So even if somebody takes it off, it just puts it back on. Okay. So those kinds of things can really save the day, because it's the one machine that doesn't have antivirus on it that the person clicks on something that now you got a bigger problem. Okay.
Well, that's like cell phones, right? Cell phones don't have antivirus protection on them.
They don't. As long as you're running the current stuff from, current patches from Apple or on the Android side. I'm a Pixel guy, so I have, Google is right up to date with all the updates for me, which is what I really like. That's what actually lead me toward the Pixel in the first place, because I knew I was going straight to Google. Some of the other Android manufacturers can be a little slow on the updates. And as a guy who works in security, I can't have that because, like I said earlier, we're being attacked all the time. So we need to be prepared for that. But staying as current as you can is a big one. A good password manager on there, not using the built-in stuff, whether this is on a workstation, a laptop, or a phone, makes a world of difference too, because you'd be amazed how often these compromises go right after the password managers and just vacuum out all that stuff and ruin your life. So our favorite password manager.
Which one do you recommend? The password?
We recommend Bitwarden. We use the enterprise product, but they have a free product that you can use personally, which I subscribe to as well. And they have a sort of mid-range Teams product, but we use the enterprise product because it gives us a lot of ability to reset. The person calls, I've totally forgotten my master password to get into it. And in the old days, we'd have to say, okay, well, we'll reset it, but you got to put everything back in. Well, now we can actually reset the account for them and get them back in. Things like that.
That's what I have on my machine.
Yeah. The other nice thing I really like.
No, I had that with LastPass years ago, like 2020. I got something that I was hacked. I went in and changed all the passwords. I can't remember my main password to LastPass, so I'm permanently locked out.
I tell everybody the only two passwords I know anymore are my Bitwarden password and my login password to the network, and every other password is in there. But those two I can't forget. Okay.
Do you recommend using, how it will automatically create a crazy character? So most people will do like a birth date or an anniversary or their address, and that's just too hackable, right? Do you always recommend the jumbled up ones?
Yeah, Bitwarden does it. Like every one of my Bitwarden passwords is at least 12 characters long of just garbage. Okay. I mean, it's just truly just jumble. Okay. But everyone's unique. Okay. And Bitwarden keeps track of all that. And one other nice thing Bitwarden does is it lets you set up what's called collections. So you can share, like we have an admin collection here. So all the admin people share the login to Staples or to Amazon, and they're all part of that group. We have a tech one here. So all the techs can see, the resources the tech folks use. And we have an accounting one here. So the accounting folks can do that. And we don't have like admin folks reading accounting passwords or vice versa, but everybody who's in the accounting group can get to it as much as they need to. So one master password really resolves everything.
Nice. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. What are some red flags that you've seen in the industry?
In the industry or in prospects?
We'll start with one and move on to the other. What's your favorite topic?
So Industry, I run into the coasting problem that we talked about before, where, I'll talk to MSPs and it's obvious they haven't even reviewed their security stack since before COVID. Okay. And that's too old. Now, does that mean you have to be changing it constantly? No, but you got to be reviewing it and saying, am I using best of class? Because a perfect example is the LastPass thing earlier. LastPass used to be considered one of the best ones out there until they had all the security compromises. And now anybody using LastPass, I tell them run fast and run far. Okay. And this is a guy who was a LastPass guy himself. Okay. As soon as they got compromised, we dumped them right away. We changed every password they had and we never looked back. Okay. So there's a lot of that going on in the industry where people are just coasting. To the point where I'll go do an audit for somebody and I will say things like, I don't believe in licensing in our industry, but after seeing some of the audits I do and some of the things I see said, I start getting on my soapbox about we need to have licensing in our industry because this isn't good. And a supposed professional did this. I mean, it'd be like going to a plumbing site and finding, everything put together wrong and then finding out the person, just did it themselves. Okay, well, that sort of explains it. But if another plumber did it, what's up with that? Because that's a licensed plumber that did that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know there's kind of either way, like, yes, we should have some kind of licensing in our industries. Like, we don't have licensing in our industry. It is the wild, wild west.
Mm-hmm.
There's crazy out there. And so, yes, I do support that to a certain extent, but, yeah, I again, I think I'm a little Pollyanna and I think that everyone should have personal integrity, which they don't. So that's my downfall.
I agree with you on both those counts. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so different businesses face different threats. And I know IT providers, IT security is not one size fits all.
Right.
What are some things that you've seen that, are industry specific?
Well, for example, CPAs, they're ones who are constantly trying to be attacked to go after the data sets they have internally. So we see that a lot. We see law firms with things like wire fraud and financial services firms with wire fraud. My family doc, one day I stopped in to see him and he seemed a little upset. And it turned out he was trying to transfer his retirement plan from one vendor to another, and somebody intercepted the request along the way. And they made a mistake in that they asked for taxes too, which made the receiving company a little like, what's this about? And they looked into it and found out the information had been changed along the way. He came that close to losing his entire retirement. So, yeah, wire fraud is a huge problem right now. We have a construction company that fortunately they weren't affected, but they were doing a large multi-million-dollar construction project. And they had said, they were starting a new project. They said, okay, the deposit is, and I think it was like $2 million. We need you to send us a check for this. And, they had a process. Well, somebody had stepped into that client's company's email and they were monitoring the email going back and forth. And they replied back as somebody from my client saying, don't worry about sending us a check, just transfer to this instead. Okay. And so as a result, they transferred the $2 million to somebody else. And then they called the construction company to confirm, oh, you got it right. And they're like, what are you talking about?
Oh my God.
And so the FBI was involved there too. And they managed to only claw back a small amount of it in the end because it had gone offshore. And so they couldn't get most of it back. So, but, and they were asking, was my client involved? And we showed them all the logs to show, nope, not involved at all. This is all on the other person's end. And it turned out somebody was actually in her mailbox watching everything for an extended period of time, not just that day. He was just waiting for the opportunity to jump in and really go hard and $2 million worth of activity. And apparently they sent out a bunch of other things to people too. So I don't know what the grand total was of the hurt, but I know it started it too.
That's insane. Well, and the point that you made is they had been in the email for quite a while and didn't do or say anything. So you don't always know who's out there.
Yeah. And that's why we put third-party auditing on all our mail. Okay. So like I had somebody trying to break into my mail from South Africa not too long ago, and I got an alert here. Said, okay, somebody in South Africa is trying to break into your mailbox.
Well, that's your inheritance from that foreign prince.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, in Bitwarden, do you use the VPN at all or anything?
I don't use their VPN solutions. I don't use the VPN solutions I use are the ones that come with the firewall. Okay,
Yeah,
because they'll have two-factor and all that kind of stuff. But like I had a senior partner law firm traveling to Europe, and he said he wanted to watch Netflix in the U.S. while he was away. And he said, "Which VPN should I use?" I said, "ExpressVPN." That's my favorite sort of consumer grade one.
mm,
That like I've even used it because like I watch Netflix shows that aren't shown here in the U.S. but they're in the U.K. So I'll just open up the ExpressVPN and play them. Okay, so that's sort of nice to be able to take advantage of tools like that. But yeah, VPN for everything, secure VPN for everything, one that requires two-factor authentication too. So somebody can't just get your password and be into the corporate network. So yeah, whatever is part of your firewall, if you have a firewall, that's where I start. If you don't have a firewall at all and don't want to use something corporately, Cloudflare puts out a very nice zero trust VPN solution that we actually use for a small CPA firm that doesn't have a firewall because he's a one-man shop and he has a part-timer who wants to work remotely just during tax season. So that's worked out wonderfully for him.
You like Cloudflare. I know you and Terry have had some discussions back and forth about that.
Yes, I'm a big Cloudflare fan.
and
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
That's
yeah, I
what
am to the point. I don't think you should use the free version.
Right.
I think you just pay the $10 a month
Yeah.
and have it because the free version, I can tell people you really don't have any access to any support.
Right.
So
And you
if
need to have
something
support
happens,
sometimes. Yep.
yeah, if something happens, and we've had this happen, the SSL certificate on the Cloudflare side broke, and we ended up just moving the website because we couldn't even access it. It was
Wow.
so
Wow. Yeah.
just understand there's free is not always better.
Agreed.
free is not always cheap, I can assure you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the question I always bring up with everybody is when you get it for free, how are you being used as their product or crop? Because you're not really getting it for free. They have people coming to work every day, so somehow they're making money on you. So
Yeah.
I prefer to have the arrangement be I'm paying you, we all are on the same page. And plus I get more features anyway, so it all works out.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome.
That's good.
So you're based on the East Coast. I know primarily your clients are all up and down the East Coast, like
Correct.
from the top to the bottom. What if somebody wants to work with you? What are some of the things that you can offer? Obviously, besides ironclad security, I can assure you. But what can they expect, and what can they receive?
They can receive the same class of support we give everybody in the East Coast with just one request, and that is we don't want to work time zones that like have us here till 9 o'clock at night. So if we can work with you on the time zone issue, so that we're getting to leave at 5 because I'm very focused on my staff from a quality of life kind of standpoint. I don't want them here till 7 or 8 o'clock. And we did West Coast work there for a while, and we would get calls at like 4:45 their time, which was already 7:45 my time. And by the time I got off the phone, it was 9 o'clock, and it led to some long days. But as long as we can work around the time zone thing, I'm happy to work with anybody anywhere. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then you do have contingencies if it is an actual emergency, but because
Mhm.
you guys monitor everything, it's
Yeah.
usually not an actual emergency, it's a perceived emergency. Is that correct?
That's correct. We have a thing called a priority call, which like a CPA firm at 8 o'clock on Saturday night during tax season has an issue and needs help right away. They just call that number and we will take care of them. So for the fire, we can handle you 7x24, but for an ongoing daily, just working stuff, that's harder. We also have the socks that are 7x24. So we actually have multiple socks depending on which solutions we have in place for you. And those are all manned 7x24. So if like Sentinel-1 sees something, they have engineers on board who will loop us in if we need to be. They can lock, we give them an authority to lock down machines the whole 9 yards. We use a product called Threat Locker 2, which keeps machines secure. You can't even get bad stuff onto the machine in the first place versus counting on Sentinel-1 to catch it when it behaves badly. That's backed 7x24, and the Huntress folks who both monitor 365 for us and those lower end clients are also 365 shops, or sorry, 7x24 shops. So, we're covered across the board. It's just escalation that we need to deal with, and we'll deal with that anytime.
And
And
you prefer, oh,
it
sorry.
seems to me a lot of the people that don't take this, and I'm not going to say seriously, are the smaller companies with 2 or 3 employees. It's unfortunate, but I also know that they probably don't know enough about getting hit or getting hurt or the reason why to prevent it. And and I ask our clients all the time, and it's amazing how many just don't have, or they have an IT person, but they don't know what this IT person's doing. They don't have a
Right.
clue, and
Right.
that to me, half of it says, yeah, okay, you're so busy, you don't have to worry about it. The other half says, well, what if?
Yeah.
What kind of questions should a small business owner be? I see your tests here for every month, a quarter, all this stuff. But I'm a
Yeah.
small
That's
business owner. It's 7 o'clock at night. I'm sitting in front of the TV. What can I do quickly to see if I'm secure? Just go to those
okay.
2 websites is the biggest thing.
Well, they're the big ones. We'll go over a couple of the other ones too. A big thing to know, and I run into this a lot with small businesses, is sort of this attitude of we're too small for anybody to care about us. And what you need to know is about 43% of all ransomware nowadays is small businesses. And what happens is they're running automated tools. They don't know what size you are once they get in. Once they get in, they will look and see, oh, big shop, medium-sized shop, small shop. And for the small shop, they'll hand it to the junior guys and say, here, go cut your teeth on these guys. See if you can get us 100 grand. Okay.
Yeah.
Versus you get into a Fortune 1000, then they're going to have the big guys working on it. Now, from a standpoint of ongoing checklists, let's take a quick look here. I know I had. So testing the
And you
firewall, which we talked about. What's that?
do you primarily do small to medium-sized business, or you do any size business?
We are small, we call in our industry, we call it SMB, small, medium business. My goal, well, the base I will take care of is 5 users to about 250. My goal is like 30. Okay. So 20 to 30 is like the perfect one for us because we can do a lot for somebody of that size. If you get past 250 with me, I'm going to tell you probably want to work with somebody else because you become, there's just more going on, including, the political decisions, the ongoing discussion with senior management and all that tends to take a lot of time. So we're not good at servicing above 250. At one point, we did a 2,500 seat deployment, and I got to learn a lot about working in large deployments and decided it really wasn't my deal. Okay. Back to your original question, Terry. Asking to see if you have an IT person or a MSP or somebody being able to understand your firewall logs. Hey, can you show me what's going on our firewall? Like how much are we being attacked in say the last 30 days? A little pop quiz kind of approach. Okay. Oh yeah, let me show you what's going on. Making sure this is a big one, making sure your Office 365 data is really being backed up. Okay. If you're not using 365, my question would be why, unless you're using Google. If you're using GoDaddy or some of the other small providers, you generally don't have much in the way of security unless you're using the GoDaddy 365 version. But then you still have GoDaddy getting in the way. So I don't really appreciate that one. But if you're, some small shop just hosting mail, they don't tend to have the resources to keep your mail secure anymore. So you want to go to one of the big guys. Okay, so that's a big one. But a lot of people don't know the mail isn't being backed up. Like Microsoft says outright, we don't back up your mail. Our job is the infrastructure. If the infrastructure fails, we will fix it. But if your mail gets corrupted by something, say, on your machine that erases half your mail, not our problem. Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have that conversation. Definitely making sure you're using multi-factor on everything. And I mean everything, especially stuff that's financial related at all. Okay. Now, some people don't supply, like a true 2-factor like banks right now. They still want to do SMS, but I'll take SMS over nothing, but I won't use SMS if I have any other choice. Okay.
You like
So
the authenticator, like
I
Google has their okay.
love the authenticators because no data is going back and forth to authenticate. I'm just putting in a number that's rolling every 30 seconds and is entirely independent. So some guy in China trying to break into my account is not going to have that information. So that's golden. That's my preferred method. We also use Duo for authentication, which is sort of a variation of that. It'll send a push to your phone and you can approve it. Okay. but I don't like SMS if I have any other choice. Okay. Check and make sure, this is a big one. We mentioned Bitwarden earlier, but you'd be amazed how often we put Bitwarden in a site and then go back and audit them later and find out they're using the regular Google password manager to put in all the newer stuff because they just got lazy. So, we'll actively disable, the browser-based password managers because they're all very easy to just vacuum all the data out of nowadays. So you want a third-party one and one that's secure. Cybersecurity training, that's a huge one. Okay. And it's cheap. You can get cybersecurity training now for like $2 per user per month. It doesn't cost practically anything. And your insurance carrier will love the fact that you're doing it. Okay. So that's a huge one. Okay. And it's table stakes nowadays. Does that help a little bit?
That's awesome.
100%. Yep, definitely. So now if somebody finds out they can get to those 2 websites, what's the first thing they need to do?
Call Bill.
Well, that's you're always welcome to do that. The other thing is, if you do have a provider, I would say, what's the deal? Okay. We just got a new client. He called me yesterday and he said, every time I asked him a question like that, they couldn't answer my question. Okay. Oops, we missed. Oops, we're sorry. Oops. Well, I'm sorry. Oops, your company was ransomed. Okay. I mean, we can't have oopses like that. We have automated routines here who check every day, so we know when somebody's, activation has failed even for some reason. Maybe we got a year license for them and 6 months in, it stops working. We get an automatic ticket here. So we know we got to go figure out why. Okay. So they need to be doing that same kind of thing.
Will WebRoot or SentinelOne, will that help prevent, does it have a firewall system within WebRoot?
They have basic firewall protection that runs at the workstation level, but I wouldn't count on it for anything other than the machine next to me might be trying to get onto my machine, but I would not count for it to be like protecting me from the internet. They do like extension add-ins too, where, they'll try and protect you from bad extensions. My experience has been they're very hit or miss. So I would not be saying, I'm a big, 2 is 1, 1 is none kind of approach from a military standpoint. And I don't like, counting on one cheap WebRoot, extension add-in protection and saying, okay, my company's safe. Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that. Okay. Now, if it's the 3rd level down after 2, industrial grade levels in front of it, and it's just going to catch the absolute worst day, okay, it's a throw-in freebie. I'll take it. Okay. But I'm not going to go looking for it.
Makes sense. So good deal.
Awesome. Do you have any last little things that maybe I didn't bring up that you wanted to share?
Oh, I think you were being very thorough. Okay. Education, by the way, we do have, education on our site, partnersplus.com, where we're actively always putting new articles out there for you. So if you want to go take a look at it, you may find some genuinely. I'm trying to give back to small businesses as a small business owner all the time. So we're always trying to do that kind of stuff for folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had a statement come in from Business Growth Ready. I don't know if that's his name, but had something similar with a client's website. We look after. The owner said nobody would try to hack us, telling them they're on the white list for the British NHS Health Service, making them a gateway. Interesting. So yeah. I don't know much about British security.
I do know NHS shows up in the every day I listen to podcasts about security, and their name shows up way too many times in a bad context. So I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do know I hear that name a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Awesome.
So, well, this has been awesome. Like I said, this is something I think every business needs to pay attention to, no matter your size. I mean, Elisabeth and I are 2 people here in our house, and we need to make sure that we're just as secure as anybody else is out there.
Agreed.
So, what recommendations do you have for like payment processors? A lot of small businesses don't pay much attention to the security of payment processors. My rule's always been let the payment processor store all the data, and you don't store any data on your own machines? Is that kind of the best
I'm
way
a
to go
big
about it?
believer in that, because if your machines get compromised, your life just got a whole lot more complicated, because all that ACH data and credit card data was on your machines. We have a favorite provider right now that is called Alternative Payments. They integrate with QuickBooks. They integrate with all those different guys. They have a great portal. Okay. And my clients love using it. And, they're very deep technically, and they've been phenomenal to work with. So if you're interested at all, just reach out to them. It's alternativepayments.io is their domain. Because when I was first doing my due diligence on them, when I was talking to them, I looked up .com, and it turned out to be an entirely different company, which led to an interesting conversation. And they're like, no, that's not us. Okay, so just look for the .io. Okay.
What kind of recommendations you have for people that travel like we do with laptops?
Encrypt. Obviously, you're going to have your laptop encrypted. Okay. You're not going to have your laptop auto, as soon as you flip the lid, just be logged in for you. So you're going to want to go through like a Windows Hello or some kind of authentication onto the laptop. And you need to have all that data backed up all the time, because, you're walking off the plane and it slips and falls. I had a guy drop his right onto a tarmac in an airport, and it destroyed the laptop. And the thing was only like a month old. Okay. So he was more than a little upset, especially since he decided extended warranties are just gimmicks. And so as a result, he had no accident coverage. So that was the end of that nice new laptop. But you got to assume that laptop is going to get out of your control or get lost, and you need to make sure that data is not going with it. Okay, that's the big thing. And there's a couple of ways to really nail that down, but using just using the onboard Windows security tools to make sure the drive's encrypted is a very big first step.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Windows, is it people still out there promoting that Apple can't be hacked?
They are that series of commercials continues to carry forward. It was money well spent by Apple. Okay. To this day, I walk into sites and they're like, my Apple can't be compromised. And I said, why do you say that? Haven't you seen the commercials? Is the very next sentence. Okay. And I say, no, as a matter of fact, some months, there's more compromises for Macs than there are for Windows, which a lot of people don't know. So you really need to stay up to date on your Apple updates, just like you do your Windows updates. If you do that and you're under a supported OS, that's the other big part, then you're golden as far as you can be. I mean, you still need to be prudent about what you do with your device, but that's a big part of it. But yeah, they can be hacked just as easily.
I can't use my iPhone 4 today.
You'd be amazed how many
You're
conversations we
about
have.
12 versions out of style there.
Yeah.
I know, right?
So, but no, this has been great. I do appreciate your time. This has been super valuable. So I'm going to promote this. I have been talking to people I'm getting more serious about security, because I believe with AI, you better, because now AI is doing a lot of stuff that humans used to do. And
those old spamming emails that you could just read and realize it was all broken English, now they write better than I do. Okay. I'm sort of proud of my writing, but these guys write really great stuff. And I get fooled once in a while. And even when I get fooled, I get alerts on my thing, and I'm just like, I got fooled. Okay. So I mean, it happens to everybody because they're that good. So you need to be prepared for that.
I always tell my mom, look at the email address it came from.
Right. That's where we tell everybody.
It didn't come from @Microsoft.com. It came from 12379.micro.
They're creative with the characters too. What is a 0 or an O? I mean, you have to look at like the A, and I mean, it gets pretty intense. Again, if you would use your powers for good, like I think that you could make exponentially more than scamming people. But again,
well, the other big one we're getting hit with right now is phone calls from Intuit. We're having clients across our whole base getting phone calls from Intuit, which is not Intuit, obviously. And we had one the other day almost get fooled into it, and then she got suspicious and she called us, and we're like, hang up the phone. Okay. So, but yeah, those fake phone calls from Intuit or Microsoft, especially Intuit recently, are a huge problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Heck yeah, it's been awesome. So thank you for all your knowledge and protecting us.
You're very welcome.
And if anyone needs to reach Bill, he is at partnersplus.com. And, or, if you can't find him there, holler at me. I'll connect you guys. And absolutely take security seriously because the hackers are.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you both very much.
All right. Have a great week. We'll talk soon.
Okay. See ya.
Awesome.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.